Imagine, imagine that jobs affected high school students. Well, first we'd have to ask, do they in the first place? Well, that's what my team asked. We conducted a survey with all students in Potomac Falls, all grades were allowed to answer it. 73 of 100 surveys got back to us, and the outcome was actually pretty surprising. We found that the more that students worked, the less well they did in school and the less positively they viewed school. And even beyond that, we found differences between genders and between races. So now it's really time to figure out how jobs affect high school students. Before we delve into any conclusions, it's important that we talk about the details. More than half of those who were surveyed work more than 15 hours per week. And most students actually miss due dates at least once in their academic career. And in fact, 16% of students miss due dates more frequently because of their job. And only 5% of students say they miss due dates less frequently. This kind of goes against the idea that we're told that extracurricular activities will help with due dates because there is a time crunch and we'll have to manage our time better. So that's interesting to know. And education.cuportland.edu found that students working more than a range of 15 to 20 hours per week actually develop bad habits, such as smoking and drug habits and drinking habits. And the National Institute for Health, which is a government agency, also found the same. Bad stuff happens when students start working usually more than 20 hours. SeattlePI.com also agrees that working more than 20 hours actually causes bad things to happen academically. For example, if students work more than 20 hours, then it'll cause certain problems like students will become less engaged because they're more tired and they can't pay attention, and they'll miss after school help and after school study because they have to focus on their jobs. However, this isn't to say that working is bad. Working certainly does help. For example, working helps with college applications, especially if the jobs in question deal with academic aspirations. For example, if someone wants to go into nursing and they work as a lifeguard and learn how to do CPR, that definitely helps them with their college application. And we also found that most students agree that it helps with their work ethic. And 60% believe they would not be doing better in school if they had stopped working. While that is good, we also have to take the goods with the bad. While working is good, it's only good up to a certain hour mark. If students start working too much, bad habits will form and academics will suffer because of it. While doing the survey, we've discovered that there's a difference between genders and between races. Now, no big conclusion can be drawn from this. I would advise against it, but it is important to note these differences as it might explain the different trends that might be seen between genders and between races. If we start with gender, 53% of females reported working between 15 and 25 hours per week. That's different from males who reported 41.3% of the time working between 26 and 35 hours per week. 45% of males reported working less than 15 hours, while only 38.5% of females reported the same work hours. So already, we can kind of see a difference between the experiences genders have in their jobs, in their workplace. If we continue, 77% of females reported that their job had a positive effect on their work ethic, while 58% of males reported that their job had a positive effect on their work ethic. 57% of females reported that their job gave them more valuable life skills than school did, while an astonishing 39% of males believe the same. 54% of males view their job as only a money-making venture, while 20% less, 34% of females reported the same feelings about their job. So I will stress again, we cannot make any grand conclusions from these. These are important differences to note. We shall continue with race. Those who answered African American/Black or other, and other are those who identified as races that we did not have from our selection, and that selection was white/Caucasian, African American/Black, Asian/Pacific Islander, and Hispanic/Latino. Those who answered African American/Black and other, 25% of those two groups worked 26 to 35 hours per week. That's different from whites, who only 2.5% worked 26 to 35 hours per week. 12.5% of Hispanic/Latinos reported working 26 to 35 hours per week, and only 7.69% of Asian/Pacific Islanders answered the same. Those who identified with other races and those who answered Hispanic/Latino, 25% of those two groups started working because their family could not be supported on just the parents' income alone. But that statistic has an important backstory to it, because no other race that was selected on our survey answered the same thing. No whites, no African American/Black, and no Asian/Pacific Islander answered it. On a much more lighter note, 70% of the people who answered the survey did not take classes with a lighter workload because of their job. And that is a legitimately good thing. We do want students to push themselves in academia. The University of Michigan found something that I thought was pretty interesting. They found that Hispanics/Latinos and African Americans/Blacks were more likely than Asian/Pacific Islanders and whites to report working more than 25 hours per week. If we want to get into specifics, Hispanics/Latinos, 32% of whom worked more than 25 hours per week. Blacks reported 31%, whites reported 22%, and Asian/Pacific Islander reported the lowest, with only 18% reporting that they worked more than 25 hours per week. And that statistic is important because, if you'll remember, those who work more than 20 hours per week have negative influences on their social and academic habits. So, I will reiterate again, we cannot make general conclusions based off of these, but we figure that these demographic differences will hold the key into explaining why there is such a difference in trends between the races and between the genders. So the statistics that I mentioned might discourage some students and might lead others to ask, why do students even find jobs? What do students even find in their jobs if all there are these negative repercussions for working so long? Well, to start with, perhaps the more obvious answer, money. 48% of students said they started working for extra money, and 63% of students spend their money on personal wants. And so most students spend their money on luxuries. That being said, however, there are perhaps less obvious answers to the question, why do students work for extra money? For example, some students either have to or want to pay for non-essential bills, such as phone plans or phone bills, and others still need to work because their family cannot be supported by their parents' income alone. If we continue, 45% of students started working to have a better resume, perhaps for college or perhaps for a future job, showing initiative. And most students said they saw a positive influence on their work ethic because of their job. In fact, SeattlePI.com found that students who worked jobs equal to or less than 15 hours per week had developed good skills, not just for the workplace, but also for their academic skills. So, what is the solution to all of this? There are obviously bad things that happen because students work so much, but there are also good things that students see and get because of their jobs. Well, perhaps the solution should be, like my group concluded, that school counselors should educate the parents of students who are working so that they understand the negative repercussions of working so long, so that perhaps the parents can then restrict students from working too much and can help them work at a good set of hours. The demographics we found show real differences between the genders and between the races. However, our research alone cannot make too big conclusions, and so my team would advocate for more studies on this issue. So really, all it comes down to is better learning about what longer hours do for students so that we can help them and thus help the future succeed.